Brilliant. Well, welcome to today's podcast. And today I'm really happy to welcome Simon Barrington of Forge Leadership. And it's brilliant that he can make the time to be with us today. And I'm really looking forward to kind of exploring this whole topic of leadership with him. And as my book, I See You, comes out. And it's just brilliant to kind of do that. Perhaps, Simon, we could just kick off with, tell us a bit about what you're up to at the moment and your current role. That would be brilliant.
Yeah. Hi, Mark. Great to be with you.
Yeah.
Congratulations on the book, by the way.
Thank you.
Really good. So, I run a leadership consultancy. So we spend a lot of our time coaching executives in the not-for-profit space and SME space as well. I have a number of coaches that do that. But our big focus at Forge Leadership is on developing leaders of character and integrity. So I kind of coined the 5 I's of leadership. So clarity of identity for people, so knowing who you are, being able to articulate your authentic voice. Then identity, then integrity. So your actions matching your words, being very clear about that. And then that leading to an inner strength, an ability to ride the waves, and to be secure in who you are and to face the challenges that leadership brings, and then that ultimately leading to an influence that people can have as well. So so it's all about character for us. It's all about the internal work that needs to be done for a leader. We just get a lot of joy in seeing leaders released into a new freedom to be who they are and who they've been called to be in the workplace.
Yeah, sounds great. That's really good. Excellent. Just in terms of context of your own leadership, who in your leadership journey, who would you say has influenced you the most in terms of the way that you lead? How long have I got?
No one famous. I think interestingly, it's the people behind the scenes who really influence me. It's the people whose names you won't know, who have taken the time to invest their time in me as an individual, seen potential in me, taken risks with me, and often promoted me above the level of my incompetence, but who've kind of really dug into who I am, asked the difficult questions, helped to shape me. So I just thinking from I spent 14 years in BT, and I think there were 2 significant people there amongst many for me. So my first boss in BT was a guy called Nick Force, and Nick was just amazing at spotting the potential, drawing that potential out of people, asking good questions about what motivated you and who you thought you were. But before the days of that was back in 1989. Before the days of flexible working and and everything, he'd send us out to get ice creams on a Friday lunchtime for the whole team, and Friday afternoons were free time, basically. Basically, Friday afternoon was go into the lab. We're working in a research environment. Go into the lab and do whatever you like. Don't do paid project work. Just do whatever you like. And he actually knew over the years that the creativity that came out of those Friday afternoons and the freedom that came out of that to actually express ourselves and who we are made him one of the best managers in BT, and everybody around him would applaud him for the creativity that was coming out of the team. But he created margins for people to really express who they were and express themselves. And then another one was a guy called Jerry Thompson, who was my first director boss in BT. And I remember my first meeting with him, and he called me into that first meeting, and he said, "Simon, everybody tells me you're brilliant." Okay? and that you deliver 110% every time, and the programs you run are brilliant. So in our one-to-ones every month, I'm going to spend 10 minutes talking about your work and 50 minutes talking about the people outside BT, your peers who you've met and had lunch and dinner with, and what that's done to influence you. And just in one act, he just lifted my horizon significantly to say, actually, as a leader, your horizon needs to be much bigger than the work that you're doing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're going to be shaped by the people that you're interacting with. You're going to be shaped by what you see outside. And I think the challenge for leaders, especially leaders who stay a long time in an organization, is that they can lose that perspective and they can lose that sense of horizon.
Yeah.
And Jerry knew that really, really well. You know, he would say things like, Simon, the problem with you is you know everything about nothing and nothing about everything. Which is great, isn't it? You know, and the reality is, you know, as CEOs and as leaders of organizations, we get so immersed in the task at hand and what our board wants and what we need to deliver and the products and the services. It consumes every waking moment for us, and we just miss, the starkly obvious right in front of our nose, because actually we're not lifting our heads enough and not lifting our horizon enough. So two people you'll never have heard of, but who had a significant influence on me as a leader and in my leadership development.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, really good environment to learn your craft.
Yeah, and I think, interestingly, often challenge myself to go, oh, would I take the risk on the younger leaders that Nick took with me when I was 21? Gosh, you know, that there's a challenge. You know, why did he ask me to do? How did he ask me to do that? You know, he must be mad to do that. You know, how did he know that I would succeed in that? And I think the other, particularly with Nick, was that he died of cancer whilst he was leading our team. So, you know, there was a real sense in which we saw the humanity of a leader as well, and the focus on people and the reality that, you know, our work is part of something much bigger, and we need to have a holistic view of the community that we're involved in and the people we're interacting with, and the life and death issues that often people are going through as well. So he taught me through you know, the pain that we went through as a team, just the humanity of leadership. And I think that's something that you know, people are being more and more aware of, and certainly with the drive for looking after more people's well-being, then you know, as leaders, becoming more human, becoming more authentic, becoming more of ourselves, bringing the whole of ourselves to the workplace is something that I started to learn very early on in my career, and I'm very grateful for.
Yeah, no, that's really good. Why do you think leadership is such a critical issue at this time?
Gosh, I think there's so much uncertainty around. So we like to pretend that we're in control, don't we, as leaders? You know, we like to pretend that actually we can predict the future and we can make our plans, and you know, we back in 1989 again, started off my career, there was 5-year business plans and, you know, 5-year strategies, and BT was great at that. It had to be, because it would be planning for exchange rollouts that took 5 years to do. But the reality is, you know, the phrase VUCA is often put around volatile, uncertain, chaotic, ambiguous. Never more so than walking through COVID over the last 2 years. And there's a sense in which leaders need to be even more secure in who they are, because you can't be secure in your environment and your achievements. So you need to be secure in who you are so that you can help people navigate the increase in uncertainty. And I don't think that uncertainty is going to go away anytime soon. The reality is none of us have walked here before. None of us have lived in this environment before. There have been tectonic plate changes of a new generation, the millennial generation, who are passionate about purpose, who are passionate about authenticity, who are passionate about making a difference to the planet. And the uncertainty of, viruses that we can't control.
Yes.
There is a sense in which our culture has changed dramatically because we've come across something which it's very difficult for us to predict how it's going to act. And we've become so used to predicting markets and predicting stock fluctuations and predicting outcomes and predicting this, that, and the other. And the reality is we need a whole set of new tools that will allow us to navigate an uncertain environment. And so, leaders need to be able to bring the security for people, but also bring the honesty of not knowing what the future brings. And that's a difficult balance to strike, but it requires a maturity of leadership, which is prepared to be honest, is prepared to be open, is prepared to admit failures, is prepared to trial and experiment more, because we live in an environment where we often don't know what the answers are, is prepared to bring everybody to the table and bring a diversity of ideas to the table, because nobody knows where the next answer is going to come from. And so if you're not listening to a breadth of cultures and backgrounds and experiences, again, you're going to miss out. And people are anxious. Our employees are anxious. There's greater levels of anxiety in our employees, but also in our customer base. And so being able to lead out of a clear sense of who you are, with a clear sense of purpose and direction. So I often talk about riverbanks. So actually, as a leader, being able to set riverbanks of purpose and values and behaviors within which we operate, that then you can actually move depending on how the environment is moving, and be agile in moving within those riverbanks at speed, without having to go back and examine who you are every time, because you've got that clarity of this is who we are, this is what we've been called to do, this is our sense of purpose, this is our meaning, this is what we're trying to achieve. But within that, the delivery methods might be very, very different. So we've all seen the rise of Deliveroo and Just Eat versus restaurants over the last year. I have a faith, I go to church. We've moved online. I've been in a church building for 18 months. So the delivery method has changed, but actually the purpose remains the same, and the values and the behaviors remain the same, but we need to be really agile in the way that we adapt.
No, it's really good.
So leadership absolutely critical.
Absolutely, no, it's really good. I think, and what you're saying is about the internal work of a leader, that you lead yourself before you can lead others.
Totally. And that's hard work. Really, really hard work. If I had a pot of money to spend on every new CEO, new director, I would send them to therapy before sending them to a leadership. No, seriously.
No, I know what you're saying.
Therapy before I would send them on a leadership program.
Because
actually, it is when we get into those difficult moments where, things from our past, things that we haven't dealt with, things that we're insecure about, bubble out and bubble to the top. That's where our leadership gets really sorely tested, because we haven't done that internal work. And that internal work of understanding what motivates us, of understanding why we're doing what we're doing, of understanding our blind spots, and so our blind spots in terms of things that we do that other people walk out of the room and start talking about, that we just don't realize, but also our vulnerabilities as well. So the areas where we haven't sorted out because we haven't done the inner work to do that. And I think I've just written a book with my colleague Justin Humphreys about putting justice and integrity at the heart of how you lead, and the first 3 chapters of that book are all about the inner work that needs to be done, the understanding of our motivations. I mean, for me, I just to give you a real example. So for me, my motivation for going into leadership was pleasing others.
Right.
It was part of my upbringing was, you always got to please others. You're there to serve others, a high Protestant work ethic of duty, to please others. And actually, when I got into a leadership position, I found out that actually you can't please everybody all the time. And actually, if you do try and please everybody all the time, then actually your decisions will be like a child's scribble on a piece of paper, just all over the place. One day you're over here, and one day you're down here, and one day you're over here, and one day you're over here, and nobody can read where you are, and you become inconsistent and in your behaviors and the way that you're treating people. And I had to do a lot of work on the internal piece of rejection for me, actually. So not from my parents, I had a fantastic upbringing, but actually was bullied at school, bullied in youth club, and actually always felt that maybe I didn't quite fit in. And so rejection was a massive issue for me. And that plays out in every leadership interaction. It plays out in every decision that I've made. And actually, it wasn't until I started to deal with that I understood this massive blind spot that I had, that it was impacting the ability of my business to grow and go forward and deliver, impacting those people on my team, creating an environment in which they weren't able to grow to the full extent that they could possibly grow, because they were having to deal with my insecurities. And there's Kouzes and Hansner in their brilliant book, The Leadership Challenge, talk about finding your authentic voice. And that's the inner work. Who's the real Mark Billage? Who's the real Simon Barrington? Can you bring the reality of that? So when you get me, you get a Welshman who's lived in exile in England for 30 years, who's married to a lady from Northern Ireland who has a deep Christian faith, who's been shaped by seeing injustice all around the world. You're shaped by that, and you're shaped by those interactions, and that brings a perspective of a white middle-aged man who's been shaped by that to the workplace, and with all the good points that has, but also the challenges that has as well. But owning that and saying there are some things I'm really good at, but there are other things that other people are much better at. So I'm much better at starting things than finishing them. I'm much better at vision and passion and encouraging other people to join in with that than I am in delivering on a project plan. It's just who I am. But owning that is a key step for a leader in terms of doing their inner work.
That's right. No, it's really good. I think one of the things I'm trying to do with the book is to kind of help people understand that team culture can be shaped, and team culture can be intentional. But there are some things that really do get in the way of a team realizing its potential. What would be one or two of those kind of things that you have observed over your years of leadership?
So I think how fundamental relationships are within a team context, so we've done quite a bit of work with the Relationships Foundation in Cambridge, mapping out the basics of team relationships. So just starting from what we've been talking about just now, so that self-awareness is fundamental to team culture. If you have a couple of people on your team who are totally unaware of the impact that they're having on the rest of the team, you're going to have a problem. Okay. And so encouraging individual members to do that self-reflection and self-awareness is vitally important. And then empathy, social awareness is the next building block to team culture. So the ability of team members to see the world through the eyes of other people. So the CIA and Google did two massive studies post 9/11. So Google went looking for the magic source in their high-performing teams in Google. And a huge study that basically came out with the fact that it was empathy, or a high level of empathy within a team, that actually led to its highest performing teams. And the CIA saying that it was a lack of empathy that led to them missing the 9/11 bombers.
Right.
A lack of empathy amongst team members that led to that. So there is this cognitive empathy, but also the emotional empathy as well of team members from one another. So those are kind of building blocks. Then in the middle piece, I suppose you have what the Relationships Foundation call the proximity framework, where they basically say, well, even if you've got 5 or 6 people in a team who have high levels of social awareness and high levels of self-awareness, then the environment in which they're in, and whether there's fairness, whether there's a common sense of purpose, whether there's a clear set of ways in which you encounter one another, whether there's an understanding of the history and the storyline of the team, become vital components to that team culture flourishing.
Yes.
And then I suppose, so we would call the social awareness, self-awareness, the foundations. That proximity framework, the middle piece, we would say is the environment. And then the results of that in team culture are high levels of trust.
Yes.
Ability to challenge. So we were working with a team recently and on their culture, and using a tool with them. And it was really interesting that the culture in this team was actually very good. High levels of social awareness, high levels of self-awareness, really good levels of trust. But nobody felt safe to go into an area of challenge with one another.
Right.
And actually, as we dug under that, we found that was because they were all used to working in dysfunctional teams.
Okay.
And so actually the toolkit to be able to take it to the next level, when you've got a really highly relational, high levels of trust environment, just wasn't there.
Right.
So the permission given to say, actually, challenge is good. A diversity of views is good. Different viewpoints is good. So those become the results then, which is Leccioni, basically high levels of trust, high levels of challenge, commitment to one another and to the decisions you make, accountability, and then results. So I think team culture kind of needs to embody that self-work, the environment, and then a striving for a common set of results.
That's really good
as well.
Yeah, it's always surprising, isn't it, how we view disagreement and kind of miss, as long as we can, focus on the issues at hand and not the personalities around the table, that actually it can be a very creative and innovative process.
Yeah, but it goes back to the inner work of a leader. It needs a leader who's secure enough in their own identity,
absolutely,
that actually they can open up and give permission for that challenge without feeling challenged themselves. Or being challenged personally. You know, your authority comes not from your you always being right. Your authority actually comes from the environment that you're creating, in which people can make excellent decisions. Not from, and I think this is where we often get it wrong. Is we think our authority comes from, you know, I've been put in this position because I'm the best person to be here and I can make the right judgments every time. Well, you don't need to be in leadership very long to realize that's a load of rubbish. So it's about the environment that you're creating, in which other people can flourish. That's where your authority.
No, that's really good. I've been reflecting, obviously, with the pandemic that we've been going through. I'm actually quite excited on one level, because I think actually it's accelerating the positional versus the influential leader. And, you know, like you've been talking about, that the leadership work has to go on inside, and it's about the authenticity of the person. But I think I'm quite excited, because I think actually the kind of command and control type of leadership hopefully is moving into the background.
And I think, you know, another thing the pandemic has brought about, I think, is a reduction in the amount of micromanagement. Leaders having to work much harder to define the riverbanks, so that people can flourish, because actually you can't go and look over their shoulder every 2 minutes. Because they might be in the park. No, but you know, actually, I think trust levels have gone up. So we did a survey of clients where about 400 clients, where we saw actually trust levels have increased in their teams over the pandemic. And it was all about you know, leaders having to work harder at communication, having to work harder at clarity of purpose, and then trusting people to go about their work and get their work done without micromanaging them. So I think we have seen an acceleration of the death of micromanagement, because you just can't do it over Zoom.
No. I'm hoping
if someone suggested to you that, actually, Mark, leave your Zoom camera open all day so I can see what you're doing, you know. But that's what we do in the office, isn't it?
Absolutely. Well, I bet some people thought about that.
Or maybe someone would like to write into you if they tried it.
Yes. They snuck.
Tell you what happened.
That's right. They snuck in and put cameras in everywhere. Oh, that's really good. One of the things I was thinking about, or dedicated a chapter to in the book, although it's seeded throughout, was this idea of love-led leadership. And I guess in contrast to leading out of fear, which you've touched on already in many different ways. But what are the benefits that you have discovered of, I guess, leading out of love, and perhaps contrast that with what it's like leading out of fear?
So I think fear is, one of the biggest causes of breakdown in office life and workplace life. And I talked it in terms of insecurities, but the fear of rejection, the fear of losing power, the fear of being blamed, the fear of losing your job. Those fears, when they are present in a leader, change the behaviors of a leader. So just as I was saying about rejection changed my behavior, so the fear of being rejected changed my behavior to being one of being inconsistent in the decisions that I was making. The fear of losing power can lead to blaming other people, creating strongholds within the organization that are impenetrable. The fear of losing your job can again lead to hiding and blaming. And so fear has consequences. Interestingly, I would say the very thing you're fearful of, the behaviors that you do are more likely to lead to that fear coming about.
Yes.
Yeah. So if I'm fearful of being rejected, my reaction to that, out of my shame of that, is actually to try and be nice to people. But that inconsistency in its own right leads to a greater chance that I'll be rejected.
Yes. Yeah.
And that cycle needs to be broken. So helping leaders name their fears, and name the fears that are impacting them in the workplace. Really, really important. The flip side of that, of course, is as you've said, once you actually allow that fear to be healed and to be restored, and you become more whole, then you're able to have greater empathy for other people. So what I was talking about earlier in terms of empathy is what you're talking about in terms of love, really. So the love is the ability to see the world through someone else's eyes, and to come alongside that person and to empathize with them and to be in that situation with them. I think as leaders, we need to be able to have that empathy and love, but we also need to be able to step back from it as well, and not get emotionally entwined with it and emotionally fused to a situation. So as leaders, there's a sense in which we give of ourselves. There's a kenosis. There's a giving of yourself. There's a emptying of yourself. There's a love that comes out of that, that's born out of generosity and a desire to bless and serve and create environments in which other people can grow. But we also need to be able to step back from that, as well, and not become emotionally enmeshed in it. So a leadership that's based on love, but love is probably an inadequate word in the English language to describe what we mean. So it's a servant-hearted love. It's a empathetic love. It's an emptying of ourselves love. It's a giving of ourselves love, that is really at the heart of what we're talking about here. But you need to be able to get some perspective on that.
Absolutely. That's great. Thanks, Simon. In terms of obviously we're thinking about coming out of restrictions and things like that, but it's obviously kind of in one sense focused around, as you've mentioned already, well-being. I mean, what are some of the things that you do as a leader to kind of keep yourself healthy? I mean, I often say healthy leader is a happy leader, that kind of thing, but what's some of the things that you do?
So I've had to work really hard on this because I was really bad at it. So that's the first thing to say, actually. So I think for me, it's about marginal gains. It's about, the British cycling team who changed the mattresses on the beds in the hotels that they stayed in to get the cyclists better sleep. So it's working out what those marginal gains are for you. So we're all busy. For 14 years, when I was chief exec of an international NGO that was doing relief and development around the world for 14 years after I left BT. Very demanding job, full on, significant number of staff, significant level of turnover. Okay, and Friday lunchtime, I would go and walk along the beach for 2 hours, between 12 and 2 every Friday lunchtime. And sometimes when I hit that beach, I wanted to cry. Sometimes I was punching the air in joy. Sometimes I just felt numb. But whatever was happening, that rhythm sustained me. during the whole of that time, actually. So it was healthy in terms of physical exercise, but it was also healthy in terms of mental exercise as well, and for me, a spiritual exercise too. So just walking for those 2 hours and kind of unburdening, giving myself perspective. And I learned through that actually walking changes my perspective again. And interestingly, the other day I was procrastinating over a bit of work that I was finding quite difficult to do, and it was the kind of thing that I'd normally spend an hour on, and 4 hours later I'd not even written anything, and just procrastinating over it. And my wife came in from work and said, "Oh, what works is to go for a walk. Why haven't you been for a walk?" And so I went, "Oh, okay." So I went for a walk and came back and wrote it in about 30 minutes.
Yes.
And I go, "Oh, I knew that. I knew that's what works for me." And there's something for me, which is a marginal gain, which is actually just the process of left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, connects neurons in my brain, left and right, that brings around a different thought process than happens when I'm sat in my chair.
Yes.
And I've just learned that about myself. So I keep myself healthy by doing lots of walks.
Great. Sounds really good. Yeah.
And I love that. And it's a processing place for me as well, processing pain, processing joy, processing hope, life. And it's a transition place. So leaving Samaritan's Purse, where I was for 14 years, I went to walk the South Downs Way. Last summer, when my dad died, I went and walked the Norfolk Coastal Path. And it's just become, something that I just find really healthy, and try and build into the daily or weekly rhythms that I have as well.
No, that's really good. And it's so important, isn't it, that leaders find what is the place that really helps them process, move things around, think about things. Yeah, no, that's really good.
And the people that you're leading don't need you to be full on, 24/7. They don't need that. In fact, the likelihood is, if you're full on 24/7, that you're micromanaging. You're not releasing other people. One of the best things I did ever was take a sabbatical. Just the people who stood up during time and took on responsibilities. Some people who you'd appointed to do that and maybe did a good job or a bad job, but other people who you didn't appoint to do it just stepped in and took on responsibilities and did things much better than I ever would have. And then your job is to release them. From that as well. So I think there's a sense in which we've talked about perspective and horizon a lot, haven't we? What's your legacy going to be? What are you going to leave behind? Trevor Waldock wrote a book which is fantastic called To Plant a Walnut Tree. I don't know if you've read that. But he talks about, again, horizon, perspective. Are you prepared to seek to build something which you might not see the fruit?
No, it's really good.
Whereas I think far too many of us as leaders are far too busy picking fruit now, and actually we're missing the opportunities to plant something and embed something that actually can bear fruit for future generations, just because our horizon is too short.
No, that's wise
and that can be because of our own insecurity as well. I want to be fruitful. I want to see fruit now. But actually, some of the great leaders are leaders who've seen the fruit of what they've done, 2 or 3 generations down the road. But they changed the environment that made that happen.
Yeah, no, that's it's a good point probably to kind of conclude things on. I think I've been reminded of legacy as our first grandchild arrived about a couple of weeks ago. So
congratulations.
Thank you. It just kind of changes your perspective slightly, but I think you're right. We need to have that kind of, as Simon Sinek sort of says, that infinite game sort of mentality that it's not just about the here and now, it's also about, what are we building that will last into the future.
No, totally.
Yeah. Thank you very much for your time today, and I wish you very well with the things that you're involved in now with your new book and your television series that's coming up, and just thank you for sharing what you've shared with us today.
Pleasure. Thanks, Mark.
That's brilliant. Thank you.